Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give everybody 30 seconds or so to find their way into the room. While we do that, I'll just get slides up and running for us. Hopefully, you can see both Jonathan and I. If you can, if you can just pop something in chat box, tell us you can see us and hear us. And Jonathan, can you see just slides at the moment, or is there anything else on my
No,
screen?
I can see the holding slide with you.
Excellent. Good job. Thank you for that. Always get nervous. Nobody puts anything in the chat box which says you can't hear me or something. So even if it's a hello, where are you joining us from today will be great. And we'll just give
Well,
him.
Will, to reassure you, we've just had Gary drop a yes into the Q&A box. Gary, thank you
Yes.
for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary. Always reassuring to know that everything's working and the tech is working. But let's get underway. So welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us this afternoon to talk about the digital practice in 2024. Anybody that knows me, and I'll do introductions in a moment, will know this is a topic very close to my heart because I wrote a book called The Digital Firm in 2018. So what's going to be really interesting today is talking to Jonathan about, has anything really changed? Has the needle moved at all? Are we any further ahead than we were in 2018? The first time we thought MTD was going to land on our laps, and here we are 6 years later waiting for MTD for ITSA to finally hit. But we'll consider that shift over the last 6 years during the course of the session this afternoon. So a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces. Firstly, I always like to finish a little bit ahead of the hour. So if you've got another appointment at 3 o'clock, we give you a chance to grab a drink or whatever it is you need before you dive straight into that. Please feel free to ask questions as we go through the session. Use the Q&A box for that. And Jonathan and I will both keep an eye on that, and we'll pick up any questions as they become relevant as we work through. Any that we haven't got to, we'll try and pick up at the end of the session for you. If you just want to agree with something we're saying, or indeed disagree with something we're saying, use the chat box. We're very happy for this to be interactive between those of you that are listening in. So with no further ado, we will crack on. Firstly, some introductions then. My name is Will Farnell. I'm founder and director at Farnell Clarke, but I'm also co-founder at App Advisory Plus. I've, as I said, already written The Digital Firm. I wrote The Human Firm that was released last year, and I have the advantage and benefit of working with a number of accountancy firms and bookkeepers on a range of things, helping them from growth using tech and so on. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Jonathan Stobart from Bright. Jonathan, do you want to give people a quick intro of who you are, and we'll come on to kind of introducing Bright in a moment.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks very much, Will. So I'm Jonathan Stobart, and as you can see in front of you, I have a very long, convoluted job title, which is Brand, Content and Communications Manager here at Bright. So a bit of background, I suppose. Obviously, my role here is really about it's managing the brand, trying to understand the way that Bright is perceived in the market, and just try to ensure that it's always being reflected, obviously, positively. My background is that I joined Bright as part of the acquisition of Accountancy Manager, which took place in April 2022. And prior to joining the accountancy manager, when I joined them just prior to the pandemic in 2020, I was working in an accountancy practice for 9 years as their marketing and BD manager. So I got a bit of industry experience from the practice side, and then obviously jumped over to the vendor side.
Can't believe it's over 2 years since the acquisition, Jonathan.
Oh,
Time flies,
unbelievable.
doesn't it, when you're having fun?
Yeah, tell me about it. There's an awful lot going on at Brides, which I'll no doubt cover in a moment. But yeah, it certainly makes the time go quick, that's for sure.
Excellent. So just so everybody knows what we're going to talk about today, hopefully no surprises here. We've done some introductions and hopefully we've warmly welcomed you all. We're going to talk about adoption, first of all, cloud software in firms. It's something I talk about a lot, so apologies if you've heard me talk about it before, but we're going to touch on that. We're going to talk about the impact of technology in the firms that we work in. Think about some of the typical tech stacks. So what areas of technology are firms using? How are they using it? Of course, we can't talk about a digital practice, a digital firm, without touching on what's coming next. So we'll talk a little bit about AI and where we see AI's role. And really interestingly, Bright did a survey recently, and we're going to share some of the results of that survey in terms of the way that firms are thinking about technology, how they're using technology within their firms. So we're going to share some of that, which hopefully will be useful for you. Keep the questions coming in, and this will hopefully be a really engaging and really useful 45 minutes or so for you over the course of this afternoon. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, Jonathan, and I think we're going to crack on. But before we do that, just in case people don't know who Bright are, do you want to just give a quick intro to Bright and your suite of products?
Yeah, certainly. So I suppose people may not know Bright at this stage, but they might know one of our legacy products, which is typically going to be Bright Pay, Bright Manager, which, as previously referenced, was known as Accountancy Manager. There's Bright Books, there's Bright AP, there's Bright Proposal software. There's a raft of different solutions. Ultimately, what we're trying to provide is being that one provider that provides all pieces of software that an accountant or bookkeeper could need in their practice, and we're trying to provide that all from one provider. That's all going to be cloud-based, all going to be integrated, and provide that, I suppose, that seamless client experience that I think we're all kind of striving for within the industry. That's what we're currently working towards.
Excellent. So you've got some slides, Jonathan, which we're going to use to kind of drive our conversation. It's definitely not death by PowerPoint here, but the slides that Jonathan's got here really just give us some areas to focus the conversation on, and some interesting stats and things in there, some of which we'll agree with and some we might challenge a little bit. But we'll take you through these, starting really with
Yeah.
where are we in terms of adoption?
Absolutely. Well, just double check. Can you see the whole
Yes,
inside of the digital practice? Cool.
I can. Yeah,
Excellent.
it's
Okay.
in presenter view at the moment, though, Jonathan.
Okay, let me just I'll unshare and share that again because something strange happened just as I
Yeah,
was doing it.
while you're doing that, I'll start. So the stats that Jonathan's going to share in a moment are from an accounting web survey that was actually done a couple of years ago now. It's interesting numbers because anybody that's heard me talk before, I don't necessarily agree with them. I think they're being too generous in terms of some of the adoption levels that they're talking about. So we've got the slides here now. So Jonathan, if you kick off first of all in terms of your take on these numbers.
Yeah, I think Will, you're quite right. There's some very generous statistics here, and I think the big takeaway that I look at these numbers is that it's great that people are saying that they're starting to embrace the cloud. The big takeaway is that there's still an awful long way to go, I think, here. And ultimately, the purpose for putting on today's session and the discussion that we want to try to drive at today is a lot of accountants that come to us and they want to talk to us about tech usage and what's going on within the industry. I feel like they always want to be looking over that garden fence. So what are the other people down the road doing? There's always this perception that other people are doing an awful lot more than what I'm doing. The
Yeah,
stats that we see within the industry, things like this, if I'm being totally honest with you, Will, I don't think always helps. They may be accurate, and people may be already be embracing the cloud. Like 60% of people have embraced the cloud here. In that
and it's things
60%,
like using that word, isn't it, Jonathan? It's like embrace. So what does that mean? Does that mean you've got a
precisely.
client using zero? And this is the point, we see these stats, but actually when we start to ask questions, and in a moment I'll talk about my take on this, and it's very similar in terms of the way that vendors count partner numbers and things like that, which I think distorts the true picture of what's really going on.
100%, and these the two stats in front of you here. You look, so 60% of accountants have embraced the cloud, but actually 45% of firms are using a mostly, if not fully, cloud-based solution.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's already telling us that the 60% they're not a fully cloud-based firm here. Actually,
Yeah.
in reality, only 45%. Well, for me, that screams 55% of people are only touching the cloud. They're only just starting to explore it. And I would suspect what's going on there is people probably are using something like Zero, a cloud-based bookkeeping platform, but perhaps they're sticking to more traditional technology, desktop-based technology. Sometimes might not be even using solutions to continue to do stuff, and therefore that we're not pushing ahead in it as much as we can that with the tools that are available within the industry today.
And we're gonna share a slide a bit later, and it's like dangling the carrot to make sure you don't go away, which I thought was really interesting in terms of from the research that Bright did with their user base. So again, there's we've got to look at who's responding to these surveys. But on this slide we're going to share, it talks about the percentage of use of different types of technology, and what I refer to as pre-accounting tools or invoice capture tools, so Dex, Auto Entry, HubDoc, and so on, is a really interesting one. So I'm not going to tell you what the stat is on the research there. We'll save that for you for later. But that's for me is a really good example. If you're using a cloud-based general ledger, and you're not using a pre-accounting tool, then you're not doing cloud accounting. It's like if you're still manually keying data, then you're not doing it. These tools weren't designed for manual data entry. They were designed for automated data entry. So it'll be really interesting when we show you that slide later, what that tells us about the true position. And I think so my take on this is that these numbers are way too high. So in 2018, when I wrote Digital Firm, I said we were at 20% adoption of cloud accounting tools. When I wrote The Human Firm in 2023, so last year, I said we were at 20% adoption. So that doesn't mean that we didn't move. It means that I was way too ambitious in 2018. And just if we start to think about, well, do we believe that number? There's a number of ways we can cut it. Firstly, we can look at the number of small businesses in the UK, 5.9 million of them. How many of them are using a cloud accounting general ledger? It's way less than 2 million of them. So straight away, we've got a whole bunch of end users that are not using this technology. If we think about the number of accounting and bookkeeping firms in the UK, that's somewhere between a region of 34 and 70,000, broad spectrum. So I tend to kind of go conservative and say, let's say it's 40,000. You take somebody like Dex as a market leader in invoice capture, they have about 12,000 partner firms globally. So if we said 7,000 of them are in the UK, they're the market leader. Yes, there's other products in the market. But the interesting thing is you can be a Dex partner with 5 clients. So if you've got 100 clients and 5 of them are using Dex, you're counted in that number of firms that are using Dex. That for me doesn't mean you're a cloud accounting firm or you're a digital firm because you've got 5 clients using a product where you've got 95 clients that are not using it for whatever reason. And what we should have done is I should have done a quick straw poll here in terms of who on the call has more than 75% of their clients using a cloud general ledger and a pre-accounting tool. And that might give us a real sense of what this adoption number kind of really looks like. So for me, the needle has moved, but it hasn't moved enough. If we think about, and we're going to talk about kind of some of the impacts of technology and why we should be using technology. First and foremost, we're in professional services, so we should be using tech to improve the experience we deliver to our clients. And if using technology doesn't directly or indirectly enhance what we deliver for our clients, then we have to question why would we do it. But we need to be making tech decisions that do underpin driving that client experience. So
I
that's
suppose.
my take, Jonathan.
No, absolutely. I was going to question why, who is forcing the change in regards to the solutions? Because we're talking about, okay, so in the last 6 years, we feel like maybe the needle hasn't moved that vastly.
Yeah.
Why is that the case? And I suppose, well, actually, with some of the statistics that we're seeing is, we're seeing more and more SMEs start to move towards, tech. There's so many more businesses being run now utilizing some software. Like you have to see the amount of non-cash based businesses and how many times, even see people whacking out like little payment machines that are linked to their phones. The barrier to entry now for operating a business with the solutions that are available is so low. These people are already starting to embrace technology. So you'd expect them to be, I suppose, embracing solutions from the accounting sides, but perhaps is it the firms that are just doing the same thing year after year? That
Yeah.
it's very easy for 6 years to pass without it really thinking about it. It feels like when you say it, a long period of time, but actually, it's not in the accounting world. I think
Yeah,
things are happening all the time.
yeah. There's
So
two reasons that will drive this, and I'm not saying it's right, but it's number one is legislation. So MTD had an uptick. COVID had an uptick. So clearly COVID forced us to do things that we didn't need to do. So it was out of necessity or pain of not doing it, because if we hadn't have adopted Zoom and Teams and everything else, we would just not have been able to maintain the communication channels that we needed to. Um, and the other point is it will change when we're given no choice, which again kind of was what COVID did, really. It took the choice away. If we imagine an accounting firm with 10 partners sitting around a table trying to decide should we move to complete remote working, that decision would take 10 years, if it ever got made at all. Yet firms with 10 partners did it in a week
yeah,
because we had no choice. We had to do it. So that's either the choice is taken away or we feel so much pain that we have to make the change. Um, Now that's wrong. The reason we should be making a change, as you've got here, is because it's the right thing to do for clients. And so often it's easier for us to not change than it is to go through a bit of pain to change for the better in the long run. But client expectations are shifting, aren't they? This tells us that. So again, this is the practice, the accounting web research, but 88% of SMEs agree that having an accountant who understands technology is important. Um, Again, it's really most of the people on this webinar and listening to this are going to sit where we do, and it's in an echo chamber. And it's largely a social media echo chamber where we sit and we read about what people like us are doing. But there's a whole load of accountants that don't exist in that world. They don't
and
live on LinkedIn. So we don't know what they're doing. And the likelihood is people that are engaging with accounting web are going to be people that, yeah, well, of course we want our accountant to understand technology. But what about all the people that are still handing in a simplex D book to an accountant? They're not even going to appear on this research.
it's probably going to be a point I'll end up making a few times, but in various different ways on this session. But I do think, yes, you're quite right. There is an echo chamber within the industry, and I suppose it's more the marketing people that I keep reproducing this
Oh,
message
your fault, Jonathan.
yeah, yeah, there we go. Content marketing, there you go. But we're trying to educate people in regards to the future and the way the industry is going, and that's probably building the perception that the industry has gone.
Yeah,
Actually, I don't think the industry has gone to that extent. And I think there's various reasons why we haven't moved forwards and why perhaps during that pandemic period we were able to advance. Because
mm,
I remember people saying, "Oh yeah, the industry advanced 10 years during the pandemic," and that maybe was an exaggeration. Maybe it was partially right. Another point, the reason why it moved forward during the pandemic that we didn't touch on earlier was capacity. I
mm,
really think, yes, although accountants were very busy during the pandemic, they also had a lot more time to explore different solutions, time that they wouldn't have had in a normal world because
yeah,
you finish your day job and you go and undertake leisure activities. That obviously was taken away
yeah,
from us.
yeah,
And therefore, in our experience, we found that accountants had a lot more time on their hand to start exploring different solutions,
yeah.
particularly from an accountancy manager perspective. We saw more people signing up at the weekends than we ever have done. during the pandemic, because people sat there thinking, oh yeah, maybe I should have a look at this. I've heard it's a good idea. I've heard the marketing people talking about it on the likes of AWeb. Maybe
Yeah.
now's the time to start exploring it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
point we want you to take away on the session today is that the businesses are already moving there. Look at the way that the world is these days. We are moving forward into a digital way, and we've got to keep pushing forward, and we've got to try to keep embracing different solutions and the better ways of working that
Yeah.
are out there at the moment.
Yeah.
Despite probably not having the time and capacity that we had during the pandemic, and not having the purpose or the reason at the moment, I would really kind of strongly encourage people to start thinking about it before it becomes mandated. And MTD would be a fantastic example of that. Once it becomes mandated, and we're going to be finding that on our feet, that might be a little bit too late, and it's going to be the same point I'm going to make in regards to AI in a moment, anyways.
Yeah. And the I guess a couple of key points that I want to kind of cover off here, and we'll kind of recap on these at the end of the session. I genuinely believe that 20% number. So 20% adoption. If we start to look in a bit more detail at those that are really doing it well, that's probably down to less than 5%. So number one is it's not too late to be an early adopter. So we are still in early adopter territory. So the technology that you could be using in your firms is technology that is still giving you competitive advantage. Now, we started this journey 15 years ago with tech. We had every client using online software 15 years ago in 2009. So it is astonishing to me that we're having this conversation in 2024, and I'm telling accountants and bookkeepers this stuff still gives you competitive advantage. So other people will tell you that it's no longer a choice, you've got to be using it. There's 80% of firms out there surviving and still making a living not using it. So right now it is still competitive advantage. You start talking to clients about being able to photo receipts and emailing invoices, you are still doing things that the majority of the market are not doing. So don't underestimate the opportunity that still exists from technology. And the second point on this is that we're talking today about the 2024 digital practice. Just using cloud accounting tools is not being a digital practice, is not being a digital firm. It encompasses so much more. The point about the impact that the technology is having, it's around things like practice management. It's around not using bits of paper and sending paper engagement letters to clients. I was at an event in the US in 2019, and a guy was talking about digital disruption. And he used the best definition I've ever heard anybody use of digital disruption. And he said that digital disruption is about removing friction from the process. So if you think about the way that we want to use digital tools and we want to do things better, it's about how do we take friction from every process we have with a client. So if you think about an engagement letter and the days where those of you that will remember when you had to print out your letter of engagement, stick it in an envelope, post it, the client had to sign it, post it back. Okay, we moved to the point where you could email it and they could print it out and then they could save you the postage. All of those points of friction in that process to where we are now, where you can click a couple of buttons, they can sign electronically, job done. Friction disappears. That's what digital is about. It's about how do we make our lives and our clients' lives more simplistic, more efficient, more effective.
I suppose there's a couple of points on that, Will. But firstly, there'll still be an awful lot of firms out there printing letters of engagements, and I
Yeah,
think that's again that's my point of today's call is to kind of say, educate people on what other people are doing, and kind of say about how much opportunity there is in front of people. But what
yeah,
you're talking about is uncomfortable. It's challenging people's processes. It's looking about what you're doing and saying, should I still be doing this? Should a human
yeah,
still be doing whatever it is that I'm doing? Less
yeah,
engagement, stick with that. And often these days there are solutions out there that where the answer is no. And it's not to say to people that what you're doing is wrong. It's just that perhaps there is a better way of doing it, a more efficient way of doing it moving forwards. I suppose, and this is my point that I wanted to kind of raise on this slide, is that we hear a lot of people talking about, yeah, we should be a digital firm. We should embrace a digital first culture. I would challenge the wording on that, and I would say, hey, rather than being a digital first firm, we should just be an efficiency first firm. We should always be getting to the process of consistently challenging ourselves, educating ourselves on solutions that are out there, what's going on in the market, what options are available to me, to be able to for me to complete this assignment or this job in the most efficient way possible. And these days, there probably are much more efficient processes and options available to accountants and solutions on the market.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point because I think so when I wrote the digital firm, I talked about 10 components of a digital firm. Number one was client experience. So like the hub of the wheel that I used was around client experience. And it's a point that if the other things that sit around the outside, and that was strategy, it was technology, it was process, it was services, it was a whole bunch of stuff, if something doesn't directly or indirectly improve the experience the client gets, then don't waste your time on it, which kind of covers your last point there in terms of tech for tech's sake. That's pointless. Like, what is it actually going to do? And it's where understanding what you're trying to do as a firm is step one in this. So whenever we think about being a digital firm or a human firm, which I've written about now, it's like, what are you trying to do? Like what's the underlying or overarching purpose of what it is you're trying to do it in your firm for the clients that you serve? Because if you don't understand that, then you can't understand what technology should I be using, what approach should I be taking with people to kind of make this really work and really effective. So if you don't know your destination, then don't start making decisions about technology and process redesign and everything else. It's this idea that actually take a day off and be bold and get a white sheet of paper and say, if I was building a new firm from today, what would it look like? Um,
And
be, go on, John.
sorry, I was going to say, but and that's a really lovely point. That is because when I'm on the account tech stats, a lot of people come up to me, and I totally get it because there's so many vendors out there, all offering fantastic functionality and all these wonderful solutions, and a lot of accountants, and it'd be interesting to know in the comments if you ever feel like this, they get tech overwhelmed. There's so much
Mm.
solutions, and very often people will say, "I just don't know where to start." And
Yeah,
I always say it starts with you and it starts with your firm.
yeah,
Write down on a piece of paper your processes and circle the areas that are inefficient, the areas in your practice that you think, oh goodness sake, letters of engagements or AML. I'm going to have to get them. I still speak to firms all the time that get people to come into the office to see them in person, to see their ID, take a copy and sign it as their AML checks. And again, it's not to say that these processes are wrong. It's just to say that there are new ways of doing things. And
yeah,
and again, not because it's been mandated, but because it's more efficient, because it's going to be more profitable. And
yeah,
some changes as well, they won't be mandated by governments, and there won't be a specific rule to say that you've got to change. But the client's expectations is going to have changed, and the client won't be expecting to come into the office anymore to come and see you to do AML checks, if we're sticking with that example, or to come in and sign a printed off letter of engagement. They're just going to expect that they're going to be able to do it online. They're going to be able to operate in all the ways of they use technology in the rest of their lives, really, both
yeah.
business and professionally.
Yeah, I think on that point you made about the process stuff, I think what's really important here is that again, going back to the technology that we've got, we need to fundamentally rethink our business models. And that's why I talk about this kind of blank sheet of paper, because so much of what we do is tied up in legacy, and we've always done it that way. And nobody stops to challenge, well, why have we always done it that way? The reason that I ended up with the firm that I had is because I didn't come with any of those preconceptions. I didn't come in from having worked in another firm and seen that, well, they have a blue file for correspondence and a pink file for permanent and a buff file for working papers. Older people on the call will understand that. That kind of didn't exist in my previous world. So I came into it and looked at how do I want this firm to exist? exist? How do I want it to structure? How do I want it to operate? And what is it that I want to deliver to the clients that we serve? So I think we've got to be really bold when we talk about a digital firm or a human firm, which for me is the natural progression. But you can't be a human firm if you're not first a digital firm, because that's what unlocks the opportunity for the human element of what we do. But both of those models require us to change what we do, because it's about regular data. It's about all of the things that the technology lets us do that drives the conversations we have with clients that let us add that extra value. But we do have to rethink, because if we continue to focus on getting records once a year and processing them and sending a bill at the end of the year, we're never going to have the foundations to drive our businesses forward and prepare ourselves for what the future holds and the future looks like.
100%. And we're going to have strong relationships with our clients as we move forward as well, because
Mm.
there's going to be, some difficult conversation with MTD kind of kicks in, and the business owner is going to have to appreciate the technology a little bit more, because it's going to be more involved moving forwards. They're going to have to understand what, okay, this is being mandated and this is the impact it's going to have on the business. And we're not going to build that relationship by doing some of the admin elements of client service. That's again no longer a human has to do.
Yeah.
Well, should we talk about typically some of the tools that we see within a modern tech
Yes.
stack?
Yeah.
Because I suppose I would obviously say this given the background, but I do honestly believe that practice management can be the foundation of the practice, but is often overlooked. Now, I think when we're talking to firms, we're talking about a central client base and all the other solutions that should integrate from that. But it's often something that's still utilized manually. People talk to me all the time about our competitors and who's your biggest competitor and what's differences between you and them. And I think they're often surprised when I say our biggest competitor is Excel.
Mm.
We win far more business from firms using Excel than any of the other practice management providers out there. And
Yeah.
I think again, this is a great example of when we're talking about a digital firm of today, we'd be expecting to see practice management software within that tech stack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and for a long time for us, I mean, we end up doing very similar to you guys, and we built our own practice management solution 9 years ago. We ended up selling it, but that was down to the frustrations that we couldn't find what we needed at that point in time. And for me, we were kind of well embedded on this cloud journey. And whilst we were still using desktop accounts production software, because like there wasn't a lot of choice to not be doing that. The key thing for me was, where does client interaction happen? And for me, it was about, where do we get this single client view? Where can we go? Where's the one place we can go to understand everything about that client, where their jobs are, where their emails are stored, where their documents are stored, to just give us that visibility? Because again, you can't help somebody if you don't know them. So how do we get to know our clients? How do we capture that information and keep it in one place and share that across the organization? That's the fundamental issue with spreadsheets. We're limited in terms of what we can store in them. Sharing documents like that has always been a challenge. It's a bit easier now with SharePoints and things like that, but there are still risks involved in that, and it's not overly transferable. So practice management has always been pretty kind of fundamental to me. Some of the other tools in here, and we're going to share this slide earlier that I mentioned about what tools people are using from the survey that Bright did. So that will probably be more meaningful than this. Obviously, bookkeeping. I'm a huge fan of bookkeeping. I think that everybody should be doing bookkeeping on a regular basis, as in weekly, ideally daily, for clients that you serve, on the basis that if you're running your own firm, I bet you reconcile your bank account at least every week. So why don't we do it for clients? So using bookkeeping tools effectively. Accounts production, tax tools, we've clearly got to be using these tools. A wealth of forecasting, management reporting tools. Proposal and pricing is a fairly new category, but we're seeing firms doing really well out of being able to be more efficient with that onboarding, because that comes into this bit as well. Onboarding continues to be a challenge, and obviously talking to Bright, we are dyed in the wool Bright paid customers, so we're using that for our payroll tools. So I think anything else you want to add on that one, Jonathan? Otherwise, we'll pick it up with the stats, which will be really interesting.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing I just wanted to say is, yeah, obviously this is the modern day of the way people are running their practices, particularly from a practice management perspective. In the hybrid world that we kind of find ourselves in these days, and no one's, I think hybrid working, people thought it was going to be like a light switch. Okay, right, pandemic's over, we're now going to be hybrid firm, and then if you are feeling like that transition to hybrid working has been reviewed and changed and recommunicated out to the team, you're not alone, because a lot of people are like have probably changed their policy a couple of times in regards to hybrid working. So things like practice management software is the modern day walking into the office feeling that you can get in a hybrid firm, because it's everything that you got at your fingertips really. And I just think, moving forwards, we're going to see people utilizing solutions like this, because then they can operate the business from wherever it is that they might be.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'll move on to some of the stats. But first, we're going to talk about AI, because I think it is such a hot topic within the industry, really. And you can't go onto accounting web without hearing about AI. And again, I think from the purpose of today's session is to try to tell people what is actually getting used in firms of today. And I feel like the marketing people, those pesky marketing people, again,
Again.
they're probably misleading people into AI's impact. And I think the telling stat here is 15% of accounting firms are using AI or planning to use AI. So actually, people who have actually adopted it and that it's having an impact, it's going to be very few.
Yeah.
Now, I, for one, am not sitting here and saying AI is not the industry, because I think we can all appreciate it's pretty much like it's an untapped potential, and it will no doubt go on to play some sort of role in the industry, and it's going to take somebody much smarter than me to be able to accurately predict the future holds for AI. In fact, probably only AI knows that. But I think the point is start playing with it, because the tools are available now. And I hear very good things about Sage's Copilot, and I've got a couple of users that have spoken to me about it and who are advocates of that. And I think that's quite a nice thing. Let's start experimenting with it, start understanding its capabilities and what potentially it could do for your firm. So as its presence and as its impact grows moving forwards, we're not playing catch up. And I think that's not just the same with AI, but that's with well, I suppose all solutions out there in the industry.
Yeah, couple of things from me on this. I think your first point is spot on. AI and automation, the
Oh,
different things. I would suggest that when we see some of the other stats from the technology use, more than 15% of firms are using AI because they're using it within products that they're buying from software vendors already. They just don't know they're using it. So I think there's that. Again, hearing other people speak, some stats and some research that McKinsey and company did a few years ago, certainly seeing the uptake and the drive and the impact that ChatGPT had. And the stats were that uh, within 6 years, so by 2030, we will not be doing 60% of what we do in work today. That was a stat. So 60% of what we do today, we're not going to need to do in 6 years' time. Now, take a moment to let that just digest. And that's going to be some really simple things in terms of drafting emails. ChatGPT can do that for us already. But the question and the opportunity comes from, what are you going to do with that 60%? What are you going to do with that 60% of newfound capacity within 6 years that you're going to have that you don't have today? And when Jonathan talked earlier about the fact that we've got to change the relationships we have with clients, this is why. Because so much of what we do for them at the moment is going to be automated. So how are we going to continue to justify our fees? How are we going to continue to deliver value to the clients that we serve? Now, I wouldn't make such a big thing of this stat if it wasn't McKinsey. So like McKinsey are serious strategy consultants. So they don't kind of do stuff lightly. This would have been a serious piece of research. So go dig it out, have a look at it, and start to think about, because you've got a head start. You know this now, loads of people don't. So what are you going to do with 60% of your time in 6 years' time?
And that's the thing. I hope it excites the people listening to this now, and they appreciate the opportunity that's in front of them, because we haven't always capitalized on the opportunities in industries. Obviously, Will, I know you would have heard the stats from Zero. It came out, was it only a third of their users using direct payment
30,
schemes?
37% of
Thank you.
so it was a survey. It wasn't looking at Zero's actual like user activity, but the report that they released last autumn said that only 37% of firms or users are using bank feeds, which will astonish people. It also said 31% using pre-accounting tools, which I don't believe, and we'll show some other stats on that in just a moment. But this is the point, and that's basic automation. That's not even AI. That's just basic automation. And if we think 15 years on from when we were a fully adopted online cloud accounting practice, we are still only at 20%. Don't for a second think that everyone's going to go out and adopt AI tomorrow. It's taken 15 years and 80% still haven't adopted basic cloud accounting. So why do we possibly think they're going to go out and they're going to adopt AI?
100%. But yeah, the people on the call today hear the message, and I hope you take it away that actually I could get a head start here, and let's not be in that minority of people moving forwards. But okay. So we'll reference. So we recently undertook some survey, did a research project with our users, asking about what their tech usage looks like. So there is going to be like slight difference to some of the practice web stats that we kind of saw. This was run only last month. So what do we see here? 45% of firms, again, these are Bright users, are using mostly, if not fully, cloud-based tech stack. Now, okay, so I still think there's an awful lot of room to move forwards with that. We've got 19% of firms still using a predominantly tech desktop-based tech stack, and 81% of firms say that at least half the tech they use these days is cloud-based. I think they're all kind of saying the same thing. There's still an awful long way to go in regards
Yeah,
to
yeah,
adopting the clouds, and yes, obviously we're from a Bright perspective, I'm conscious these are our users, and we are obviously building cloud-based solutions, which I'd hope that some of these stats would be
yeah.
vastly
And
different
and
as
again,
we
it's the
keep going.
obvious things like where we say 81% of firms stated that at least half of the tech they use is cloud-based. So clearly, if you say, "What do we use QuickBooks Online and we use Zero," then we're not drilling into, well, how many clients are using those tools. It's like, as a firm, yes, we're using them. Um, what I'm really interested in is actual deployment and application. And that's why my numbers would be saying, well, that's 60% overstated. But I mean, it's positive to see that people have clearly got awareness of these tools, and I'm sure we're preaching to the converted here. But sorry, Jonathan, carry on, because I think the next one's the exciting one, isn't it?
It is. Now, this is
Yeah.
a really good one in regards to what tech solutions are going to see in your firms. Now, you know, try to avoid the big numbers with 97% of firms using Microsoft Office. That's not really telling us anything. What I really found really interesting, obviously, I'm going to go to the practice management one. 35% of firms use practice management software. Now, this is, of course, was a survey undertaken for all of Bright's customers. So it stung a little bit that obviously we've not got a high number in that regard. But again, it still goes to show that my point in regards to people are probably using Excel for this,
Yeah.
and this is perhaps not the way we want to be
Yeah.
doing it
One
moving
of the
forward.
couple of my observations on here around the practice management one, first of all, and you and I talked about this, Jonathan. You've got 35% using practice management, 26% using CRM. Now, for many accountants I talk to, those two things are seen as one of the same, and they're not. So for us as a firm, we run practice management, but we also run pipe drives a CRM system, because fundamentally what we don't want is we don't want prospects in our practice management software, because our practice management software is about managing our client relationships. A prospect isn't a client until they've signed a proposal. So therefore, all of our pipeline management and our prospect management is done within a CRM solution. When they become a client, they go into our practice management solution.
And
So
that completely makes sense. And your practice management solution will be set up to help you run that practice, as
yes,
opposed to the CRM system is going to be set up for you to nurture that prospect into being a paid for client.
yeah,
And understand the two difference between the two different softwares. Will, I know when we were chatting before, I was explaining a situation where, we recently. Yeah, I did a case study with a user, and I was asking what they used before Bright Manager, and they were explaining they used Trello before Bright Manager. And I was like, oh, that's a CRM tool, at best, really. It's certainly not practice management.
no,
And so there's going to be nothing in there that's going to be customized for your firm, or if there is, it's going to take an awful lot in order to be able to get it set up to work for you. But
yeah,
I think this is the big point I want to make here, and I'll kind of move on from it, is that there is software customized for the accounting industry. And let's use pieces of software that is designed for the job in which it's intended to do.
yeah,
And CRM software can support that. And but yeah,
yeah.
don't
And
worry
before
about
you
saying
move on
anything.
from that, obviously it will come as no surprise that I need to pick up on the second
Yes, sorry,
last
go on.
one there.
Yeah.
17% of firms using data extraction software. This totally and utterly underpins my entire view of this 20%. Because what we've got here is a survey that's been carried out amongst firms that are at least aware of cloud accounting technology, yet only 17% of them are using data extraction software, which means 83% are keying invoices into Xero, QuickBooks, Sage. This is why we are not beyond 20% adoption of cloud accounting. So I was I want to say I was delighted to see that stat. I'm not, because I want it to be much higher, but it absolutely underpins the point here that we're not even doing the basics. So only 17% of firms, two out of 10 almost, are using a DEX and auto entry. So going back to my point about the opportunity for you in terms of competitive advantage, to say to a client that we give you a bit of technology and all you do is photo a receipt, we take care of the rest of it. That is still really, really powerful. And if we had more time, 13% using proposal software largely overcomes a lot of those onboarding and pricing challenges that should be underpinning a truly digital practice. So seeing those two at the bottom with the lowest percentage just reinforces the fact that so many firms are not yet digital firms.
I wonder, and again, drop it in the comments if you want. Is when people signed up to this session, they're thinking the digital practice of 2024. Wow, we're going to blown away with all these different solutions that are actually being utilized. Perhaps this conversation and these stats, it's maybe not what people were expecting to hear. And I don't mean this to be negative. No, I don't mean to be negative. I want it to excite you in regards to we're at the start, or we're about to enter a 6 year period where the industry is going to change, and we're going to have 60% of our capacity freed up at the end of it. There's loads of opportunity in front of us. And when we're looking over the garden fence and have seen what the other guys are doing down the roads, they're probably not utilizing all the tools that you think they are. If you start using that, we're going to excel, and we're with the more capacity and the more solutions, the way that solutions are going to start developing as well. We're only going to enhance that client experience and those efficiency rates that we're seeing within the practice.
Yeah,
We'll
great.
touch on about some, because I'm conscious of time as well. So
Yeah.
there's a few points we wanted to kind of consider, wasn't there? Factors when it comes to implementing new technology. Now, there's a few big ones here. Big factors in regards to obviously customer support and compatibility. I think we probably need to talk about cost in this one, because it's
Yeah.
by far the biggest consideration.
And it comes through a couple of the answers here, and I'd just like to throw a challenge to people. We've got 86% of people saying here the number one factor when selecting new technology is how much does it cost. Now, if you put yourself in the kind of conversations that you're having, and a number of times that you might have a grumble about clients that are unhappy about price increases. Um, we have to stop seeing cost as a barrier. It's like, we're accountants, we should understand the idea of cost benefit analysis. And the fact that number one here is, well, how much is it going to cost? Whereas why is functionality or whatever more important here than, well, how much is it going to cost? Um, so I just think, and cost comes up again. We have to kind of get over this mindset that we have to look at what's best for us, what's best for our clients, and then clearly cost is a factor. But come on, guys, shouldn't be number one. Um, we if we said to our clients, what's most important when selecting your accountant, and they said, well, whoever's the cheapest, we'd probably say we don't want that client. Yet here we are saying, well, we want the software that's the cheapest. And I may be oversimplifying and things there, so apologies if I am. But yeah,
No,
let's
no,
move
I
on.
think yeah, no. The only thing I'd say on it is yes, I think all software vendors are conscious about costs and costs increasing, and nobody likes that. Um, if you do feel it's expensive, then it's probably not providing that return on investment that it probably should do, and you should work with that vendor to make sure it's having its maximum impact that it possibly can do. And yeah, I think obviously that Bright does quite a lot in regards to its customer success team. So if you think it's expensive, let's talk to the vendor and see what they should be doing. Frustrations. Now, I suppose, again, I'm going to move on from the cost thing because we just discussed it. The point that I wanted to pick up here is integration issues.
Yeah,
Because when we're talking about the digital practice, when we're talking about implementing all these wonderful different solutions, it's infuriating for accountants when they don't talk to one another. And again, from the software side of things, we hear that, and that's what particularly don't to plug us, but that's obviously what we're trying to build, a solution that all integrates all within the cloud. So yeah, for 2024, I did. Somebody said to me recently, for 2024, the software's got to be better, and we've got to be in a better solution. And I hear that, and it is getting better, and the functionality is getting better. And just quickly, I used to say we was in the golden age of accounting software in the pandemic. By that point, you had lots of different vendors that had all set up all these wonderful different offerings. Um, but it wasn't probably the golden era for the accountants because they're all independent. Nobody spoke to one another.
yeah, yeah,
Since the pandemic, obviously, like ourselves, there has been lots of mergers and acquisitions and lots of different providers of those amalgamated into one. That is a positive mood in regards to integrations because, of course, it's much easier for us to integrate our own products than it is with
yeah,
somebody else. So we're recently, particularly from our perspective, been laying the foundations for that. It won't just be us. I do think all the other providers as well will be to open up APIs, trying to build integrations, trying to work together because we hear the industry
yeah.
when we know that they're saying that this is one of the
It's
biggest
got to be that
frustrations.
integration. Yeah.
What do you want to see moving forward from your tech stack? Speaking,
Hey, cost is number one again.
cost
Way.
cost is effective as is integrations
Yeah,
and of course innovation. So well, I'm going to move on from that because I don't think there's anything
yeah,
in light in here that we haven't already discussed.
yeah.
And so this, I suppose, is the final slide that we're going to touch on today. But how does your tech impact your clients, and ultimately, what we've kind of all discussed throughout the session today, it all comes back down to this, and it
Yeah.
should impact the way that you're liaising with and servicing clients. 88% of firms believe an efficient tech stack improves communication with clients, as it should do. 100% it should do, and to an extent, I was kind of thinking about the 12% that said that it didn't improve communication with clients. Maybe it's just that they're just doing the accounts and the accountant shouldn't see it. I would still say it should improve communication because the software should be alleviating you some administrative burden so that you can focus on having better conversations with the clients. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, tech absolutely has got to have an impact on clients, shouldn't it?
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. So I'm going to just kind of finish off with some kind of reiterating some of the key points from the session today. Before we do that, big thanks to Bright for joining the session today. I've just made sure that the poll is up, although it looks as though the poll was floating in the background during the course of the session anyway. So if you haven't yet answered the poll there, if you'd like to hear more about any of the Bright products, please just complete the survey, and the team will be able to drop you a line and help you out with that. And whilst that ticks away for a moment, I shall just bring my slide back up here. So key takeaways. I always like to finish on kind of a summary of what we've covered during the course of today. So first of all, most importantly, from my view anyway, it's not too late to be an early adopter. Like, the opportunity is still massive for firms that understand the impact that tech can have on you as a firm, but also with your clients as well. Utilizing the right tech with the right people, with the right processes, will drive efficiency and effectiveness in what you do. And that both directly and indirectly has a benefit on your clients as much as it does for you as a firm. We touched briefly on AI. It's like the point here is that you got to check it out, keep up to speed with it. It creates opportunities, but it also creates challenges. If you haven't thought about policies, so if you haven't thought about the way that you want your teams to be using tools like ChatGPT or not using ChatGPT, have you got a policy for it? Have you got a policy for AI use in your firm? There's risks that we need to manage, but there's plenty of upsides with opportunities as well. This is about tech, it's about the digital firm, it's about the digital practice, but people still matter. People significantly matter. It's no good having great tech if you've got people that won't use it, can't use it, don't want to use it. So we've got to be human. Our clients want us to be human. So make sure that we still focus on people. And finally, for me, and then Jonathan, if you've got anything to add, feel free. The digital practice is more than just using cloud accounting. Hopefully that's come across from the session. It goes beyond just because you use Xero doesn't mean you're a digital firm. We've got to do more than that. 13% of firms using pre-accounting tools. Take that stat away, because that really does underline everything that we've been talking about today. The opportunity is huge, but it's down to you to take that opportunity. Jonathan, anything to add before we close? And I'm now going to close the poll as well.
I just think we're at the start of a very exciting period in the industry. Yes, we're going to have some challenges. Yes, we're going to have some things that are going to have to contend with, making touch digital obviously being the big one here. But we've also got a period of great opportunities, as we've just been touching on, to really accelerate our firms and start to build the practice that we always envisaged with the way that we want to deal with clients. Let's start adding value back to clients. Let's get the clients excited about their accountants and the service that they're receiving.
Yeah, excellent. So we are almost on the hour. So a huge thank you to everybody for attending. I hope it's been a useful conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining, and for the Bright team for joining us for the webinar today. If anybody wants to connect with you, Jonathan, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yep, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm quite, I'm always on LinkedIn, and you can also drop me an email, which is, in fact, I'll pop out in the chat box now, just so everybody can see it. It's jonathan.stobart@brightsg.com, and that's in the chat box now. I'd love to hear from you. Accounting tech, obviously, it is, for better or for worse, one of my passions, and something that I really enjoy chatting to people about. So just, if you want to reach out and have a conversation, I'd love to hear from you.
Great, excellent. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you on an App of the Month webinar again very soon. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Take care.
Cheers, everyone. See you now.